Okay, guys, you all set up? Does everyone have a Pluto SDR?
Yes.
Yes? Does everyone have an SDR? No, you don't have one? You have it, okay, good. So I just want to say that whatever we're going to do today here, you can do with any SDR, okay? We'll be doing with the Pluto SDR. This is going to change a little bit what we'll be doing in terms of capabilities, but you can do with any other SDR. So if you have an RTL SDR, if it works with your computer, if you want to use it, you can, no problem, okay? So first, before I start, I would just like to give a few words to explain more or less what we're going to do today and why we're going to do it. So let me introduce myself. I'm Leonardo. I am from INSA Lyon. Okay, I'm an associate professor. This is Mathieu Cunche, who's going to be with me today, and we both created this tutorial that we're going to present to you. So this tutorial is a new tutorial. We didn't have any tutorials like this one before. And as with all new tutorials, there is a risk, right? So we took this risk. The risk being that we had to choose the level of until where we decided to go. Okay, so for this tutorial, as you're going to see, it's not the same thing as for the other tutorials. We're going to stay at a very lower level. Okay, this is mostly targeted to to people who are really starting up with the SDRs, who probably received their Plutos or have an RTL SDR and have played around a little bit with it, but are not really sure what they're doing with. Okay. In spite of the fact that this is for a beginners group, I am not going to be going very deep into signal processing, okay? Because if we go deep into signal processing, then we'll take the whole thing just talking about maths. And I think this is not what we want to see here today. We want to get our hands dirty and we want to do fun stuff. So this is what we're going to be doing today, okay? So hopefully it's going to be useful to some of you. Maybe some others of you will say, oh, okay, this is like, I've done this before and this, I know what this is. So this is not very useful. But hopefully for some of you, this is going to feel very useful, and I hope this is actually the case. So let me talk very briefly about my background. So I work with signal processing and communications. I've done my PhD on cognitive radio, if any one of you heard about this. And then there's Mathieu Cunche, who is also working with privacy. So we actually try to mash up the two worlds, and this is actually what we do in our works. We research each one of us on our own fields, but we try to bring these two things together such that we can get the best of both worlds. And this is actually what this tutorial is going to look like. It's going to be a tutorial which is more targeted for people who are like, who don't know a lot about signal processing, but would like to actually start playing around with their SDRs, okay? I will soon give the word to Mathieu. He's going to do the introduction. But I would just like to say that what we're going to be doing today, very briefly, is we're going to explore the spectrum. Okay, so of course we cannot explore the whole spectrum. We wouldn't have time for that. But the idea is that we will play around with the signals that we're going to observe. Some of them are going to be outside signals. Some of them are going to be inside signals that we're going to produce ourselves. So we have brought here some fun things that we're going to transmit with, cordless phones and everything. And then there's going to be some time for us to set up the signal, so bear with us a little bit. It's not going to be instantaneous. And well, we'll see how that goes, and then you'll tell us in the end if you think it's a good idea or not. Okay, thank you very much. I will give try not to make too much sound on the microphone.
Yes. So good morning, everybody. So I don't know much about software-defined radio. I'm more a network guy, security guy, but I try to do stuff with software-defined radio. What I like to do is to explore the spectrum to analyze signals generated by objects, devices, and try to find flows in the way they work, if they are leaking information, private information, if there are security issues. And this is where Leo helps me. So we're going to start with a bit of motivation, why we want to do that. And we're going to, no, I'm not going to, but Leo will going to present some background on signal processing. And then we're going to dive into the exploration of this spectrum. So, so most of you know that the spectrum, there are many bands that are dedicated to very diverse usage. And this is where we want to go to try to look at not all of them, but some of them, and to find some interesting signals to see what they look like, and try to understand the application behind, and yeah, try to see what we can do with that. Like we said, there are a lot of very interesting signals that we can receive all around here, and we believe that it's a good exercise to try to find those signals, identify them, and at least try to begin the decoding of those signals. One thing that I'm interested in is, like I said, all those privacy and security issues, because you have all those signals going around. Anybody can listen to those signals, and sometimes this can be a big risk. Recently with Leo, we studied some implementation of 802.11, and using software-defined radio, we were able to identify some issues with the way the information is transmitted, how people can be tracked using those signals. And so during the course of this tutorial, we try to highlight some of those security privacy risks when they are. And also, yeah, it's also very interesting to try to decode. I guess most of you have already tried that, try to find signals and just for the sake of it, trying to see where they come from. At least for me, it's something that I like very, very much. Yes, Leo added two interesting pictures here. I'm going to talk about the one on the right. So Bastian Blosel, maybe you know him. So he discovered that there was some traffic lights next to his office, and those traffic lights were, controlled wirelessly. So you guess what he did? He started to listen to the signal, reverse engineered all the protocol, and in the end, he managed to understand how it was working. But did he manage to change to control the light?
No, I'm not sure.
Maybe he managed to do it, but
We're not supposed to say it.
Yeah, we don't know. On the left, these are the people who managed to reboot this satellite. Yes.
It's a probe, space probe.
Space probe. Okay, so many things like that, and we can go on with many examples. Very interesting example. For instance, we managed also with Leo. We looked at not radio but ultrasound. How we can use GNU Radio to analyze signals generated by ultrasound beacons used in shopping centers to track people. This was also a lot of fun. So there are a lot of signals around here. We can do many things. So let's try to do that. Couple of the examples, yeah. But maybe you are already very comfortable with GNU Radio, so this is not an objective for you. Understand the basis behind the source, know also maybe a basic stuff. Also, I think this is something that I find very useful, how to recognize the signals, what they look like, to quickly identify what kind of decoding you will need to implement. And also, at some point, I will try to talk about the security implications of those signals, because they are broadcasted in clear, available to anybody. And yeah, try to be curious about the spectrum, because every time we look at it, we discover something new. One word about legal aspects, because we're going to listen to some communications. So there are some laws regarding that. So For those who are from the ham radio community, you may be more familiar than us about those topics. So in France, it's forbidden to intercept wireless communications. This is not clear if you are able to, from which part, if you start to decode, so where in the decoding process is this illegal? But overall, I think, I know nobody was, you know someone who was bothered because he was decoding some signals. So you need to take that into account, and mostly if you know that the signal you are decoding is private communication, you don't want to decode and extract the content of that. This was for France. In the UK, they are pretty much the same regulation. So just be careful about those aspects. Just one word about that. So if you eavesdrop on some communication, you may fall under those laws. But just to give you an example of private companies that are doing that for years, have been doing that for years, and they are still not worried. So those are those wireless tracking companies who are tracking people in shopping centers, in the streets, by eavesdropping on the communication of your device, whether it's Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. So they are collecting those kind of signals, and they are not supposed to because they fall under those cases. They are still doing it. Nobody has been really complaining about that, at least not from the authority part. So I think if we do the same thing just for fun and not for profit, and we are not collecting any information in the end, I think we are in the good direction. We will not be worried about regulation.
So just to complement, there's this saying that if, I don't know if I'm going to say it right, it's not funny if you say it right. If there is a tree that falls in the forest and no one's there to see it, did it really fall, right? Yeah. So if you heard a signal and no one knows, did you really hear a signal?
Yeah. We are being recorded, so careful with it.
I didn't say anything. Don't listen to me.
Which definition of
follow the laws?
No one is listening to the recording.
Yeah. So, but there are, I mean, some of the signals we are going to look at today, they are, I mean, public signals, so it's okay to listen to them.
Actually, we're producing the signals, so these are okay. These are my equipment, and I give you the right to listen to them.
Can I just bring the coaxial cable just to be sure that?
Again, we already said that. Don't do anything stupid. We are just here for the scientific aspect, not to eavesdrop on people. One resource, since we are going to look at wireless signals, try to identify them. There is a website, I don't know if you're aware of this one, but I find it very useful for a newbie like me when I don't know what signal I'm seeing. I just go on this website, and this is very well organized. You can look at the bands in which your signal is located. There are samples, information about the modulation, also the application that are behind. This is my favorite website right now. So don't hesitate to go on there if you want to find some information. And this is now that I give the mic back to Leo.
Connected. Let's see if we can. Sure. Is it okay? Good. Perfect. So, okay, that being said, you have been cautioned. You know now what you're supposed to do and you're not supposed to do. But here we're in a safe zone. Everything is ours, so it's fine, right? So, right now I'm going to talk very briefly about signal processing, such that we bring everyone up to level at least to what we're doing. Again, I suppose that there might be people here who have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, so very deep basics. This is not supposed to be a deep course, just really so that everyone is on the same page. So yeah, this is just what I said. This is not supposed to be a formal signal processing course. If you're really interested in doing SDR at some point, I think it's very interesting that you follow some courses. So for those of you who do not have the opportunity to follow a formal course on signal processing, there are some very good online resources that you can follow. One of them is there is this guy at Great Scott Gadgets. So what's his name again? I think he's yeah, exactly. So he has these video courses which presents very basic signal processing to people who want to do SDR. So I really advise you to take a look at these. I mean, if you want to, you can go on the website. I think afterwards you're going to have the slides, so you can write it down right now. What he does is really good. It's really interesting. It's really in depth, to the point where people, for the people who are starting with the SDRs. Okay. There's also this guy at this desktop SDR. He also does some very interesting things. But there are other resources on the web. I mean, if you try to look for them, you will definitely find. And there are people who have been doing tutorials explaining some topics here and there. So if you gather all the information on the web, you will be able to understand some basic stuff. Of course, if you really want to do signal processing, then you really need to understand maths, right? So these things, you can also, for example, if you're not up to date to some math concepts, very easy place to start is Wikipedia, right? There are most of the things are there, and you can understand. And then you can also try to find some books which will help you get up to date with that. Most of the things we'll be doing is just simple sine waves and just simple functions. So this is not very, very complicated. There's the FFT, which is a little bit more complicated, but you don't really need to understand it in depth in order to do some fun stuff already. So that's a good starting point. Okay, so first of all, one of the first things that I noticed that people have a trouble on is the concept of time and frequency, right? So I would like just to start by saying that, and I say this, it might sound basic for you guys, but I have students in my courses who don't really understand this. I mean, is a signal transmitted really in time or in frequency? So of course it is transmitted in time, right? We use frequency just to analyze these signals and to understand how they behave in frequency, okay? So these two analyses are very important. Seeing the signal in time and in frequency, it is very important and enables you to understand some characteristics of these signals, right? So of course, if you look at the signal in time, you have a certain idea of the structure of the signal, where the preambles are, where the payload is, because you see there is some structure. You can see some things which are different from parts to parts of these signals, right? But if you see it in frequency, then you can also see how the band is used and how much bandwidth are we occupying in the spectrum, okay? In some moments, if you look at the signal in time and in frequency, you're even able to say what kind of modulation was used, okay? So it's very interesting to be able to use these two tools to try to understand the signals. You can bring from one to the other using a Fourier transform, okay? For the purposes of what we're doing, we'll consider that the Fourier transform is a black box that takes from time to frequency. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But essentially, we're just viewing signals in time as sums of sine waves, okay, with different frequencies. And when we sum them up, we are able to generate any signal that we want. And this is what the figure is all about. We have a signal here in time, which is a simple sine wave. We pass it through a Fourier transform. In our case, it's also going to be a fast Fourier transform or a discrete Fourier transform. And then we'll get something in frequency like this, okay? When we do a simple tone like this, then we have a Dirac, which means just an impulsion on the frequency, okay? And then the block in GNU Radio will look like this, but we'll not be using this block because most of the blocks we'll be using to analyze, they already include the FFT inside, okay? Now we have to talk about analog and discrete signals. So once again, when we're using the SDRs, we're always using discrete signals, right? So we have signals which have been sampled at a certain speed, and then we have these samples which we are analyzing, okay? But of course, when the signals exit the antenna and when the signals arrive at the antenna, they are analog, okay? So there is a moment where these SDRs, they take the signal and they convert from one to the other, which way you're doing your transmission or reception, okay? So there are some mathematical, let's say, laws that govern these things. The most well-known one being the Shannon-Nyquist law, which determines how much samples you can have so you can reproduce the original signal, okay? And essentially what we're doing is this is for very easy to, well, a very easy way to understand. We're taking a signal which looks like this, and then we're just slicing it up in time to get something that looks like this, okay? So we see here as if we have more samples, we can better represent this signal here. The Shannon-Nyquist law being the law that allows us to say what is the minimum amount of slices here that we need, okay? And then, but of course, if you have too many of these, then you need to do a lot of calculation with your SDRs, and then this will take a lot of time. So the very important thing for us here is to try to find the right amount of samples such that we are able to do whatever we want to do behind decoding or synchronizing and everything, right? So yeah, this is what I just said. Yeah, okay. So yeah, this is it. So if you have any questions, by the way, feel free to interrupt me at any time. But I gather that this is very basic stuff. Okay, frequency and rates. So another point of confusion sometimes is that people confuse the frequencies. For example, I'm receiving at 108 megahertz with the rates that I'm using inside of my SDR and inside of my flow graph. So there's a very big distinction between that. So everything is expressed in hertz or megahertz or kilohertz, but they're not the same thing, right? The frequency that we're using, this is the frequency that we're locating the signal at on the radio spectrum, okay? So this is the signal that we're going to connect to somehow in order to find the radio station or whatever transmission that we're looking at. Whereas the band, the sample rate or the band, this will be how fast we're slicing up that signal when we receive it, okay? And one very important thing, sometimes we also make confusion about these concepts, is that the sample rate that you set up on your receiver or on your transmitter does not forcibly equate, of course, to the bandwidth of the signal, okay? Sometimes you need to sample the signal faster than the actual frequency of the signal. And then sometimes you can, for some cases, you can actually sample at the exact same bandwidth of the signal. And of course, that depends on the modulation and the things that you're doing. So sometimes we'll try to set the sample rates at a higher rate, especially now that we're just observing the signals. We just want to look at how the signals look like. So we want to sample them faster than they actually carry information. Okay. And then, of course, if you're sampling them faster, then we're talking about rate conversions, and this is something which is very important in GNU Radio or in any kind of radio for that matter. Sometimes you need to go from a higher rate to a lower rate, or vice versa, if you're transmitting or receiving, and then you need to know how to do that. So GNU Radio gives us some blocks, like these ones here, that enable you to go from a higher rate to a lower rate. Then you need to be careful about these blocks because they consume a lot of processing, right? So many of these blocks, for example, these rational ones here, they try to resample the signal by regenerating the signal and then sampling down at a different sampling rate, and this takes a lot of processing. Of course, if you're downsampling or upsampling by a multiple or a factor, then that's much easier. You just need to repeat or to take out some of the samples, sorry, at a certain rate. So let's see. So of course, one big problem that I see as well with my students, at least, is that Sometimes you start with a rate, you finish with another rate, but you don't change the rates throughout your receiver or transmitter. And then, of course, you get buffer overflows or sometimes underruns. This means that a block is expecting a certain rate, but you're giving it a wrong rate, and that will create some problems. So we have to be very, very careful about this. This is like, I would say that, at least for beginners, this is like maybe 90% of the problems that we see. Okay? Great. So, since we're starting with some very simple signals, we're going to be sticking to very simple modulation schemes. Of course, most of you have heard about AM and FM, right? So all of these are analog. But there are also some other kinds of things like this. For example, like phase modulation, which is essentially the same as frequency modulations. Just another way of seeing this. Single side band, either upper side or lower side. We saw that yesterday. And also pulse position modulation. You can have a position which is going from one point to the other in an analog fashion, right? But what is very interesting for us today here is to see the digital kinds, right? So ASK, which is the equivalent in the digital world of the AM. So you may have many levels which will determine which symbols you have, right? So if in the very extreme case where you have nothing and a certain level, then we call this OK. The frequency shift keying, right? So we were just changing between two frequencies, and we are setting our symbols as two different frequencies. We have PSK, which can be also seen as FSK. It depends on how much rotation you give on the phase. So, and then you have PPM, where you have some positions which are discrete positions, and then you can choose whether this is a certain symbol or another. One very important thing that I need to say is that when we are using these SDRs, you have a complex output, right? So what is this? Especially people who have done math before, they are very confused about having these complex numbers because they don't sound very real by definition. and it's very hard to wrap your mind around the concept of these complex numbers. So essentially, what we have, when we transmit, we have a real signal, right? So it's a signal which is in time and real. And the complex is just a way to represent these signals that are varying in frequency, okay? When we have our SDRs, it will take the signal which is being transmitted at a certain frequency. For example, let's take an FSK signal. So we have a center frequency, and we are varying around this frequency there, right? So when we bring this to baseband, then we have this frequency, which is shifted from the transmission frequency down to baseband, which means around zero frequency, right? And then this is something else that my students are like, what? This is crazy. So the thing is that when you bring this down to baseband, then you have negative frequencies, right? And this is just a way of seeing signals that are shifting either positively or negatively in phase. That's it. Okay, so it's actually quite simple. And the way to extract the phase information of that signal, this is why we use complex, right? Because we can then see the modulus and the angle of these signals, and that's where the phase comes from. So it's essentially like this. I mean, it's a little bit harder than this, but it's simple maths. And if you take the time to go down and then really write it down, it's actually quite easy to see. Okay, so pause for the water and to reconnect the computer. So far, so good? Okay. Well, I'm sure there are some people who are like very high level, maybe are getting a little bit bored. But maybe, I hope there's some other people who are getting started and are actually very happy to see this. Okay, so if we want to just take a look at the signals that are going around us right now, what should we do? So first of all, you need either a spectrum analyzer, a good one, An oscilloscope, a very good one, especially if you want to see signals which are in high frequency. Or you can use an SDR. The good thing about the SDR is that the SDR does some tricks for you such that it transposes from high frequency to low frequency, and then you can use simple ADCs and DACs to analyze the signal, right? And then, of course, if you have an SDR, then you need a way to visualize the signals. And then there are some very good tools out there, like, for example, GKRX, sorry, Q Spectrum Analyzer, Spectrum. There are many things out there which are very interesting, which use several different SDRs and you can use to analyze the signals. Some of them are actually used in courses, actually used for very fancy things. So these things actually can get very good. The good thing about GQRX is that you can also demodulate the signal with very simple demodulation schemes like AM, FM, wideband FM, narrowband FM, upper sideband, lower sideband, and so on and so forth. And they enable you at least to try to listen to the signal and see what it sounds like, right? Sometimes, just by hearing the sound of the signal, I think the ham radio people here know what I'm talking about. You're already able to know more or less what is the kind of modulation that it uses, right? So this is a very good way to start. It's very simple. You connect things and you get started very easily. But actually, what we want to do is we want to use GNU Radio for that. So what I want to show you right now is that by using the very simple tools that GNU Radio give you and some other blocks, you might be able to do some interesting things, okay? So this is just for people who have no idea about the taxonomy of the spectrum. So I show again here the picture that we showed in the beginning, where we have the full spectrum here, up to 3 gigahertz, fully allocated. So you see all these small boxes here is a certain segment of the signal which is taken by a standard, whichever it is. So of course this is very hard to read. You would have to download this, and this is for the US. In Europe we have something which is different. Actually, inside of Europe, maybe some countries have different allocation of the spectrum, right? So when we talk about all the frequency places, right? So we need to know what we're talking about. So we have these here, which, of course, this is changing in log, right? So we have ELF of 0 to 30 hertz, SLF. This is, okay, so this is extremely low frequency, super low frequency, ultra low frequency, very low frequency, and low frequency, okay? Usually, our SDRs cannot go that low. Some maybe can already from around here, somewhere. But this low here, then actually I think you shouldn't be using an SDR for that matter. You should be using something else. And then of course we have the medium frequencies. This is where most of the AM radios are. And we have other interesting things here that you can listen to. Some of them are open, some of them are not. Then we have the high frequency. Then when we get to the megahertz, very high frequency and ultra high frequency. Okay. So this is just so that we have our taxonomy right, and this is where most SDRs can perform. Okay. So you see, most of them are going to be around the 300 kilohertz to 3 gigahertz. Some a little bit higher, some a little bit lower. It depends on what kind of SDR you have and what kind of band you're looking at. Some of them will not be able to listen to the whole thing as a whole. I mean, you have to be able to listen to chunks. Some of them will not be able to tune into some portions of this. So you have to check. It depends on what you want to do with it. You have to check which SDR is good for you. And of course, the bandwidth will say how much of this, how wide can you listen to these signals, okay? Bear in mind that something which is as wide as it is in this portion here will not be the same here because we're changing as log, right? So it's not as wide as. And then, of course, as I just said, your signal will only, your signal observation will only be as good as your SDR. So think about the kind of SDR you want to use with respect to the kind of signal that you want to listen to. Okay, this is very important. So today we're actually very lucky. We'll be using INSA Lyon Pluto, which is a very performing SDR. Some of you have already maybe played around a little bit with their RTL SDRs. They are also very interesting, but I would say that it depends on you. Whatever you want to listen to, this will determine which kind of SDR you're using, right? So the good thing about the Pluto is that it has a very wide frequency range, and actually you can even make it wider if you set some flags. So I don't know if you have already done this or if you know how to do it, but we can show you how to do this. But everything that we're going to be showing here can be done with any other SDR, okay? So this is what we're going to be targeting today. Okay, I decided not to go down here, even though we can, because it would be a hassle to go around everyone and change the parameters such that the Pluto can go lower. We were thinking about starting with FM, which is the very nice way, the very nice place to start. But we decided to change a little bit the thing, and then just stick to this portion of the spectrum where the Pluto is actually designed for. So we're not going as high as 3 gigahertz, but well, we stay around there. Okay, so let's explore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a signal right now. Actually, I'm going to set up multiple signals, and the first one, I'm going to do it with you. So I'm going to be doing this here on the screen, and hopefully you're going to be following me and doing this on your computer. We'll try to see where we can go. Okay, the first one is going to be an easy one. And then as I present other signals, you start getting more and more autonomous and doing it by yourself. And then so there's, of course, Mathieu, myself, and Otman here. Otman, can you raise your hand? That will be able to take questions and help out if there is a problem with your Pluto, if it's not connecting, if you have a question, if your question pertains mostly to privacy, Mathieu will be more than happy to answer. If it pertains mostly to signal processing, I think that Otman and myself, we can answer, okay? So right now what I ask is that you connect your Plutos to your computer and you try to start it while I start my thing. One thing that I just want to tell you before you start, so I see, so I'll just say this out of my own experience. So I have students who do lab sessions with SDRs. And most of my students, they manage these SDRs, they use them without knowing their own characteristics. So whenever you install and you take off an antenna, you have to be very careful about electricity, right? So if you cause a discharge to these SDRs, you might burn it, like forever, or you might make its performance go very low, okay? So what I would suggest is that before you connect your antennas, ground yourself, try to touch something which is metallic, and then, so disconnect the Pluto, attach the antennas, and then you can start. Whenever you want to change antennas, whenever you want to do anything with respect to the antennas, take care that the Pluto is disconnected and then you're properly grounded, okay? So nothing will happen. So how do you do to ground yourself? Just touch something which is big and metallic. Most of the times this will do. The best way to do is to have, something which goes around your wrist that connects to the ground pin of your power plug. But usually if you touch, for example, the metallic shield of your computer, that should be good enough for most cases, okay? So please pay attention to this because I've seen many SDRs, high-end even, which have been grilled by students because of these kinds of problems, and it will be very sad that you break your SDR in the very beginning of the of the tutorial, okay? So please, try to connect it, try to test it, see if it works. While you do this, I'm going to connect my stuff here. Great. Okay, so let's just go back a little bit to where we stopped. Now that everything is set up, my side and your side, well, mostly. So just reminding you that if you still have a problem at some point, one very easy way to fix it is just to unplug your Pluto, replug it, and then test, okay? Some of the Plutos, some of the configuration for the Plutos on GNU Radio have an IP address. If you raise it, then it might help, okay? Usually the Plutos, they can be found without any ID. So now that you all have GNU Radio open, I would like you to take a look at this. So everything that we're going to be using, well, not everything, but most what we're going to be using can be found in the GNU Radio companion software that you have open, instrumentation, and Qt. So when you go there, you're going to see that there are several blocks that are available, right? All of them start with Qt.
I think when they open GNU Radio by default, they have already something. So if you should
No, it's okay, it's okay. Just, yeah, don't worry. It's okay, I'll guide you to this as well. No problem. So what you're going to do is you're going to see there is a Qt, GUI, always, and then something, right? Time sync, constellation sync, frequency sync, waterfall sync, and so on and so forth. So everything we're going to be using are going to be among these tools, okay? So remember, in the very beginning I said that there are two ways of analyzing the signals, one in time, one in frequency. So some of these tools can be used for time analysis, some can be used for frequency analysis. So the ones that can be used for time analysis, the main one is the time sync, of course, as the name implies. So this will give you a sort of an oscilloscope, and then you can actually control it. You can try to trigger it, you can try to change the frequency, you can do many things with that. Well, there's another one which I put here, which is not really time, but let's say it is the constellation sync. So the constellation sync will take in a complex value, and actually it will plot real against imaginary, okay? So you can see how the signal evolves on the real and imaginary plane, if it's turning, if it's not turning, so on and so forth. So you can actually see how the phase is evolving. Then you have the frequency analysis, you have the frequency sync, which will give you just a way to analyze the spectrum. The same thing, it behaves as a lab equipment, so you can change parameters, you can configure the way you want. And then you have the waterfall sync, which actually will be almost the same thing as the frequency sync. The only difference is that the thing is rolling on time. Okay, so you can see the evolution of time of how the frequency evolves. Okay, and then there are some other analysis tools which we're not going to touch on today. But one very interesting one, well, there are the two ones which are the two most interesting is the Qt GUI sync, which actually embeds everything inside. So you have time, frequency, constellation, waterfall, so on and so forth. And then, for those of you who feel a little bit more tempted, it's compiled, but I'm not sure it works on these computers, is the GR phosphor. So this is like an evolved frequency analysis. So you see it looks pretty nice. And it's actually, it keeps a little bit of it stays on here on the spectrum. So you can see how the thing is evolving on time, and you can compare this with previous measurements, as well here with the waterfall display, right? And also it's easier on the eye because it has a black. It's on black here, so you can actually keep on looking for it for hours and hours without getting tired. So I'm going to go into the details on these tools. Most of them, probably some of these you have already used. But what I would like what I would like to happen is that when you get out of this course here, you know how to use them as pros. So you know how to use all the tools. And you know how to do everything that there is to do with these things. Because they may seem simple at first, but if you know how to use them very, very well, then you can do very, very fancy stuff with it. okay? So instead of actually boring you with some slides, we're going to do it hands-on. So I'm going to put on the first signal, which is this one right here. So this is the remote keyless system. This is usually used to unlock cars. Most of you have used this at some point in of your life to open garage doors and all these things, right? So this, there's a code in there, right? And then some of them have a rolling code, some don't. Luckily, the one I brought here is a very cheap version, which can turn on these power plugs at a distance. For example, if I turn it on, you have a LED which turns on, and you hear the click of the relay. Right? So this one does not have a rolling code, so we can actually hack it. And this is mine, so we can hack it. Of course, I'm not going to be pressing the button here forever and ever, so this is the very easiest hack that you can do, is you just record, right? Sorry. You can record it, and then you can play it back. And if the system does not have a rolling code, you can actually unlock things with your SDR. For example, let's see if this will work. So right here, I have another computer. Okay, this is not the same one as I'm using for the presentation, with a B200. This is just because I needed a second SDR. So I'm going to be transmitting with this one. And actually, it should be already transmitting. Let's see. 433.92. So I think that there's lots of interference in the band. So this is maybe why it's not working. But this is not a problem. We'll just go around. We'll just continue with it. So you have to take my word that it works. This is the demo effect. So basically, what we want, oh, it just turned on, okay. So what we want is we want to set your Pluto to this frequency here. So actually what it would be good for you to do is just follow what I'm going to be doing on the screen, okay? So the frequency is going to be 433.92 megahertz. There's also the 315 for North America. And we're going to use the OK modulation. Sometimes it has other kinds of modulations. So remember, this is the ASK modulation, where we have ones, which is a pulse, 0, which there is no pulse. And then what we should see in frequency is something that looks like this, in time something that looks like this. So what I want you to do is everyone open, so if you have GNU Radio Companion already, start a new sheet, empty, okay? Forget about the thing you already had there. Start a new sheet empty, and then let's do it together, okay? So I'm going to be doing this on my computer, and then I would like you to follow what I do, okay? So it's working here. I don't know if you heard it, but it's not always working because there is a problem with the. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to start with an empty thing like this one here, okay? First things first. So you have the canvas here, right? So this is the canvas where we're going to work in. We're going to put our blocks here. This is the full set of blocks that we have at our disposal, so we can choose any one of these blocks to do whatever we want. This is just an output line here where we can see what's happening. Sometimes it's very important to have this on so you can debug, see if your SDR is responding, or if there's an error message. And then you have your variables right here. Some versions don't have it. Some versions do have it. These variables here are the same things as these blocks here, which are variables, okay? We're going to be using these variables a lot, so please pay a lot of attention to the usage of this. And there's this very important variable here, which is called options, and these are the options of the top block, which will give the whole configuration of your canvas, right? So if we double-click it, we have here the configurations. Let me just get my mouse so it's easier for me. Give me a couple of seconds. Okay, so okay, that's perfect. So here we have all of our options, right? So I advise you, and many people don't use this a lot, I advise you to use it, right? Because then you have a trace of what it was, what it did, who's the author. If someone gets it, they can talk to you if they have some questions about your GNU Radio Companion scheme and so on and so forth, right? So you can set the canvas size, you can set the kind of GUI, if you want Qt, if you want WX and so on, no GUI. If you want priority scheduling and all these things, right? So right now I'm just going to set a title, key system.
Just one curious question. The difference between Qt and WX?
So Qt, so as you saw yesterday, for version 3.8 of GNU Radio, WX is being stopped. So I would advise you using Qt from now on, okay? So just stick to Qt for the moment. So key, you can put the author, whatever you want. And then first thing here is that you always start with this variable here, which is called separate, right? Separate is the rate in which the whole system is going to work. Beware that when you set the rate here, this does not tell GNU Radio to work at that rate. This is just a variable that will be read by some blocks, and some blocks will behave according to this variable. So the only blocks which will actually behave at this rate here are the blocks which are connected to hardware, right? The blocks which actually use some kind of clocking system to work, okay? So there are a few blocks that do this. If you have hardware blocks like audio cards, radio cards, this will usually have a clock inside of it. And then when we say when we tell it we want it to work at this rate, it will work at this rate. But if you have only blocks which are software, then the computer does not need to behave or to run at this speed. And what happens, it will try to run at the highest speed possible. Usually what this will do is that this will make the computer run so fast that from time to time, depending on the computer, it will get blocked. Maybe you already saw this. So this is why when you have only software blocks and you have no real-time source, the computer will run way too fast, much faster than what you're saying here, and then it will get blocked. So if you want to make it run so if you only have software blocks and you want to make it run at this speed here, you should put a throttle. Okay, there's this block which is called throttle, which is in the missed session. And you can put it, and then it will respect whatever you put here. But this is a variable, just like any variable on a code, right? Là?
La taille de la police.
Ah non, je peux pas. Je peux pas du tout. So what we're going to do right now, we're just going to put 1 mega. Okay? For the moment. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start with the Pluto block, which is this one right here. So you have a Pluto sink and a Pluto source. Sink is for transmission because it sinks data into, and then the source is for the reception. So we're going to put it here, okay? And now if we double click it, we can access the properties of the Pluto source. So usually when you open the Pluto source, you have these inside. These are the default values. So you see that we have the LO frequency. This is the center frequency of our signal, the signal that we're going to be acquiring. And then we have the sample rate. This is the slicing, as I told you before, of the signal, how we're going to slice the signal up, okay? So what we're going to put here, we're going to erase this value, and we're going to replace this with the variable name that was created automatically. So we have the variable here, which is called samp rate, samp underscore rate. We also can see it here, down here, right? Sorry, I have this thing open, so it will not work. Let me just... So we have the variable name right here, samp rate. And then what we're going to do is we're going to replace this by samp rate. Can everyone see this? I'm sorry about the size of the font. but I actually cannot do anything about it because this is automatically. Well, maybe I can. Let me check. Let me just check if I can. Is it better? Okay. Yeah, I think it's better, right? Okay. So next thing, I usually like using variables a lot because if you have one parameter which is spread over many blocks, for example, like the sample rate, then it's very handy to use variables and just change the variables and not open every block and change this parameter in every block. So what I'm going to do is for the center frequency, I'm also going to create a variable. So so let's see, I can go down here and then I can look for variables. They're here, variables, and I'll take a variable and I'll put it here, right? And then I'm going to call this variable FC, center frequency, and I'm going to set it to the frequency of the key system. 433.92 megahertz. Okay, so you see I changed the variable here, but I did not change anything here because of course we need to put the variable name here, FC. Beware that your Pluto SDR is always going to start with a manual gain of 64 dB, right? So 64 dB is a lot of gain. Sometimes if you're transmitting from one point which is very close to the point of reception, this is going to saturate your Pluto, right? So for people who are not aware of how these things work, you can imagine that this is like how high I can scream. So if you're talking to the person who's next to you and you're screaming to his ears, if his ears are picking up way more information than a signal which is way higher than it should, then it's going to sound to him like you're screaming to his ears, right? And then he's going to have a hard time understanding what you're saying because you're saying it so loud. So sometimes you would like to lower this to a value, and I would actually advise you to lower it, for example, to 0 dB and then go up little by little until you find your signal, right? You don't want to have this thing too high because it's going to saturate the signal, and then you're not going to be able to understand the signal correctly. So for the moment, I'll just leave it as is. Leave it at 64 because anyways, my transmission is over here, and you're going to be receiving back to the end. Maybe the people who's here up on the front can lower it a little bit. But for the moment, we're going to leave it like this, right? So good. So now we have our block here, which represents our SDR. And now we want to see what's coming out of this SDR. So as I said, we're going to come to the instrumentation part here, QT. And then we have all of our instruments. And let's start very easily with the QT sync. Okay? So the good thing about GNU Radio is that most of the blocks come out of the box with sample rates variable in a sample rate, right? So you don't need to change that. This is for free. What we're going to do is we're going to put around the center frequency here, FC, and I'm going to explain to you why we're going to do that. Okay? So before we can start, we have to save it, right? So right now it's called untitled, and it's not going to run as untitled, so we need to save it. So let's click on save. And then let's put it here on the user space. Let's call it. Okay, I'm having a hard time here. Key system. And then we'll save it. Okay, so this is the very basic stuff you can do to start. So you run it. And then you have something that looks like this running here on the system. Right, so there are some things which actually is surprising. This should be the frequency. See the waterfall? So you have the frequency display, time, the waterfall, time domain, and the constellation, right? So right now, let me just check if everything went well. Well, it looks like it. Let's see. Yeah, everything went well. So right now, it turns out that we have no signal whatsoever, right? We don't see anything. But there is a signal, right? So the first things we can do is we can try to change the scale of our graphs to see what happens. So first thing here is we see from time to time something appear around here, right? If you look at it, non, c'est bon. Il n'y a pas de souci. Ouais, so, non, ça va. So, sorry, do you all see it or not? So usually what I do is I press on max hold here, especially if you have intermittent signals, so that it will keep up the maximum that it was saw at some point. Let me just check. You back there, what's your problem? Oh, this is the QT sync. So if I go back here to our graph, this block right here, QT sync, QT GUI sync, right? So it gives you for free all of these instruments right there. So somehow I'm not receiving, let's see. Sorry?
It should look like this.
Yeah. Is everyone receiving a signal? Can you see it? Yes or no? No? Small one? I can probably raise the gain. Let's see. Okay, let me try to raise the gain. Thing is that this antenna is a horizontal antenna, and I think the polarization is not a good one for you guys. So let me see if I can set it up. Yeah, the remote, yes. So if we do the remote, we can see the signal, right? We just check. Oh, I understand what's happening. My computer went to sleep. Okay, now we can see it back. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the power source so that it doesn't go to sleep again. Okay, so do you see the signal? Everyone sees the signal or not? So what you should have is something that looks like this. So again, let me just show you how to use this. You can use your mouse scroll to zoom in and to zoom out here, right? To change your axis. Normally you would start with something that is around 1, okay? I'm very close, so I still see the signal when I'm at 1 here. But you might need to zoom in a little bit like this, okay? Also on the frequency display, you should have something that looks like this. So what I advise you to do is to click on the max hold here. What this is going to do is that this will keep the maximum value seen here for each one of these frequencies, okay? So this is very useful where your signal is going on from time to time. So you don't need to be looking at it all the time. You just see the thing taking up the screen like that, okay? So you see that this is the spectral signature of the signal that we're observing. So one of the first things that we notice is that it's very ugly, right? We have lots of spikes here. And this is due to the signal type, okay? The signal is actually very discontinuous, so you have lots of harmonics, and this will generate many of these spikes that you're seeing here. So this is actually quite normal. You're having these things which are quite cheap, so they will do simple transmission schemes that work, and they're not really caring about if it's looking good or looking bad.
What kind of modulation?
Yeah, so this is OK modulation, as I said in the beginning. So if we go on to the waterfall, you see that from time to time here, let me just rescale. From time to time, we have our signal that appears here, right? Sorry, this thing here, okay? But of course, as you can see, there's some other stuff going on here, and this is interference. So this is also a good way to see that there might be something around this place right here. We see some signals going on there, and then we see our signals here. But here, around the center, there's also something going on. So maybe there's another transmission going on somewhere. Yes, because I want to see a lot of band because I want to see what's happening around it. Okay? Of course, the signal itself does not need 1 megahertz of sampling, right? Because it's very straight. It's a very, very, very thin signal. But this is why I like to start with 1 megahertz, because I see what's happening around, and then I get a feeling of if there are side transmissions that might be interfering, and so on and so forth. Okay? And then if we go to time domain, we see the signal here going from time to time. Okay, it just passes through, and then we see noise again. This is happening because we're transmitting some packets, and then we're not transmitting anymore, so this is why we have this. And then we have the constellation, where from time to time we're also going to see something that gets bigger. So this is the IQ samples. In complex, they're rotating. This is normal. It's a normal behavior, right? So I would like to concentrate on the time and frequency, and for this, I will ask you to do one thing. I'll ask you to close this, so when you close it, it stops, okay? We're going to take out the sync, the GUI sync, and we're going to replace this with a GUI frequency and a GUI time. And then we're just going to check that everything is okay, number of points, sample rates, everything looks fine. I'm just going to change this here to FC, right? The center frequency, okay? And then I'm going to restart this thing here. So now I'll have this view here with two screens, top one and bottom one, okay? There are a couple of things that we notice here, okay? So here we have 2 signals, the red and the blue signals. This is the real and complex signals, okay? They're seen as separate signals here. We see them here, right? Data 0, this is the 0 input. We can have multiple inputs, by the way, the real and the imaginary. We also have this ART 32768. And then down here we have the frequency view. And then from time to time this goes up and then it goes down, right? So this ART thing right here, this is just a trigger, okay? Oh, sorry, not a trigger, a tag. So this is actually some metadata which is attached, and this is included by the Adam Pluto. So right now we don't care about this. This is just, I think it's the size of the buffer or something like that. So we're just going to take it off. So how do we control this whole thing? Well, we go with the middle mouse button, and then we click it here, and then we have a menu, right? So we can stop, start, and then we can do many other things here. Okay, so we can configure, for example, the blue line and the red line. So we can change the line title, color, width, whatever you want. What we're going to do right now is we're going to uncheck show markers here, and then for the imaginary one as well. And then as you see, the tags will disappear, okay? Second thing we're going to do here for the time, for the time view is that we see the signal, it appears, but then it disappears. And this is actually quite annoying because we cannot look at the signal really and really analyze the signal. So what we're going to do is we're going to trigger the start of the acquisition, okay, with a certain condition. So a very simple way of doing that is then just by analyzing the amplitude of the signal. When the amplitude of the signal, you see that when we have noise, the signal is very low. And then from time to time, the signal gets higher. And this is where we have something which is being transmitted. So we're going to trigger it by the amplitude of the signal. And the way to do this is to go here inside of this menu right here, which is called trigger. For those of you who have used an oscilloscope before, you know how to use this, right? You have the modes, free, auto, normal. For the moment, we're going to use normal mode, which means that it's only going to trigger when it sees the condition. It's not going to show anything else. So when we click on normal, it asks us for a level. So right now, I would put something around 0.1, at least for me here, but maybe you have to do something different. And as you see, there is a line over there, and the signal stops immediately. So maybe 0.1 is not enough. Let me put something lower. So if you need to change the level, you go back to trigger, level. Let's put 0.05. So you see now, the signal gets acquired and it stops on the screen. So now you're able to look at the signal and then see and try to make sense of the signal, right? So one thing which is actually kind of bothering me a lot is that the signal is very low. I would like to see a higher signal. So again, you can use the mouse scroll to zoom in or to zoom out and see a better version of the signal. So there you go. But actually, this is not what we're seeing right now here. So sometimes it gets triggered by noise, by the way. So you see that the signal starts here and ends there. It's not very coherent. So what we would like to see is the whole packet, okay? One complete packet. So in order to see one complete packet, we need more points here on the time scale. The problem is that we're using 1 megahertz. So at 1 megahertz, to have 1 second, for example, we need lots of points. So there are many ways you can go about doing this. One of them is that you can just, so if you're confident that your computer can support it, you can just go right here, click the mouse button again, and then change the number of points. Usually it starts with 1024. Let's raise this to 10,000. So now it triggers again, and now we have whole packets here, right? So now we have 10,000 microseconds. And then we have many packets going on here, actually, right? We can see the packets now. Okay? So the thing is we're actually triggering on one of the packets, but we can see several of them going on the screen. Okay? So one interesting thing though to do is actually to stop the thing, okay, when you have enough. And then you go inside and zoom with the left mouse button into one of them. Can you see that? Actually, what we have right here, for those of you who have a sharper eye, this is not actually a packet. This is one symbol, right? So we have, as I reminded you, we have OK, right? OK transmission. So either we have nothing, which is a 0, or something, which is a 1. So here, we have a 1, okay? So actually, it turns out that we need more points to be able to see that signal. If you want to zoom out, by the way, just click the right mouse button, and it goes back. Okay, so this is our outermost zoom level that we have at this point here, and we see that this is a 1, this is a 0, this is a 1, this is a 0, this is a 1, this is a 0, but we still don't have the full packets. So how do we go about doing this? We have to increase the number of samples, right? Problem is that if you have too many samples here, your computer is going to go very, very slow because then you have to render many, many points in your screen. So what is the problem that we have right now is that we're sampling at 1 megahertz, a signal which has a bandwidth which is much lower. So of course, the transmission time of the packet is so high that we need many, 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 many chops of the signal to be able to see it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our first block, which is none of these blocks here, to downsample the signal into something which is more feasible, okay? So I'm going to show you something that I did here, and then, so let me stop this.
One question, if the center frequency is already the correct value, why do we still see a modulation? Why don't we just see a modulation?
Because this is, this is exactly what we're seeing. No, you're actually right. The problem is that we're not actually centered exactly where we should be. There is a slight drift.
Okay.
So the thing is that these things are constructed in such a way that if you have a slight drift, or even a big drift actually, for that matter, it's not that much of a problem because we're just looking at the energy of the signal here. We're not looking at the actual shape of the signal.
Just a diode demodulation.
Yes, so we're just looking at the envelope here of the signal. And since we have an envelope which is different from 0, 0, different from 0, then we don't care. And this is why these things are actually cheap. Because they don't care about synchronization in time and frequency. They can be actually very rough, but who cares, right? So, so what we're going to do is we're going to stop the whole thing here. So let's stop it. And then I'm going to go to this one right here, which I already did some stuff, okay? So this is essentially what I did before. The only thing I did, so I added a new variable. So I still have my sample rate variable here at 1 megahertz, right? And then I created a new variable which I call display rate, which is just for me to display, okay? And now I'm going to bring down my rate from 1 megahertz to 1 to the power of 5, which is 100 kilohertz, okay? Which is still a lot for these kinds of signals, but at least we'll be able to see the full packet. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to pick up a fractional resampler, which you will find here in the resampler's place, right? So you pick up a fractional resampler, and what is this going to do is it's going to change the rate from a higher rate to a smaller rate, or conversely, to a smaller rate to a higher rate. So either it's going to interpolate or it's going to decimate the signals, okay? So the way this works is a little bit more complicated. I'm not going to go into the details because then otherwise we would spend a lot of time on this. But just understand that this brings from a higher rate to a lower rate or vice versa. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to put phase shift because we don't want any phase shift. We put it at 0, and we're going to put sample rate divided by display rate, which will give us the rate of conversion of the resampling, okay? So we're downsampling from sample rate to display rate, always in this sense. Or we could be upsampling from display rate to sample rate, but in that case we need to invert the order here of our division. And then at the output of this, I'm going to connect this to the time sink. Beware, your time sink has sample rates at the sampling rate variable, right? So we need to change that to display rate in order not to have here a problem of rate conversion, okay? So we go from 1 megahertz, we go down by a factor of 10, and then we go down to 100 kilohertz. Did all of you do this? The changes? So if we run, now we should have something that looks roughly better in terms of packets, right? So let me just tell you one thing which can be quite handy, is that in this version here, I have enabled here the sidebars with all the options. So this is essentially the same thing as clicking with the right mouse button, but you can do things quicker here, right? You can, for example, you can set your trigger here right now. You can change the level and so on and so forth. What I'm going to do, not to confuse you, I'm going to take off the control panels here. They can be enabled or disabled at will. I'm going to zoom a little bit on the signal. And then I will set my triggering at something which is comfortable for us. So normal. Level, I will put 0.05, just like I did before. and then you see it stops immediately, and now you have the full packets, right? So now, so before what we were seeing is let me just stop this one here so we can check. We were seeing this before. We were seeing something like this, right? So now we have more signals appearing. Let me just unlock it so I can record a better one because these ones are small.
You show again the setup of
Sure, I will. Sure, maybe I went too fast on that, yeah. So, you want me to go back to the
the setup of the frequency sync block.
Oh, the frequency sync block is exactly the same. Didn't change. It's still connected directly to the Pluto source.
The time sync, you change the sample rate?
Yes, I changed the sample rate for display rate. Okay? So now what I did here was I also increased the number of samples. I'm going to show this to you. Let me go back to the running version. So if you see here, the number of points is now 1,024. So I put 10, let me just go back to 10,000 as we had before. Right? So there it goes. And now we have the signals here that we can see on the screen. So let me stop this. And then I can go into the detail here on the signal that we have, which looks like this, right? So does every one of you have exactly this on the screen? Because now this is the part where I'm going to explain some interesting aspects of the signal. Let's move on. Please, can I have your attention for a second? So right now, we have the whole packet here, right? Do you all see this here on the screen? Do I have everyone's attention? So, as I said, this is an OK signal, so we have signal, no signal, signal, no signal, signal, no signal, right? But it looks weird because sometimes we have a thin thing, a large thing, a thin thing, a large thing, and so on and so forth. Well, it turns out that this is an OK signal, right? But it has a sort of a ppm modulation inside of it. So depending on the width of the signal here, we might have a 0 or a 1. So let me show you what I mean. Let me go back to my slides. Let me go to the next one. Okay, so actually what happens is the binary 1 is coded with a short pulse and a long silence. And the binary 0 is coded with a long pulse and a short silence. So this right here, short pulse, long silence is a 1, right? Long pulse, short silence is a 0, okay? So now, actually we don't even need to do anything. We can just look at the signal and we know what it means. So here we have a 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, and so on and so forth, right? So you can, so if you're actually very, very interested in this, you can observe many different kinds of signals, and you will see that this part here is always the same. So this must be a header, right? So this header must contain some synchronization symbols, maybe the ID of the receiver, right? Because these things have a switch on the back where you can change the device. So maybe there's an ID here. I don't really know. I would suppose that the 101010 is just a synchronization symbol, and then the 111 here encodes somehow the ID of the device. Right now my device is set to 4, so maybe either these 2 bits here or these 2 bits here encode the device name. So I don't know, maybe I could change and test. But we'll not do this for now because we're actually a little bit short on time. Now we have here the outlet ID. So this will give me which outlets I'm controlling, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So right now I'm on outlet 2. And this is the action, turn on, turn off. Okay? And then now you have here a less symbol, which is just a stop symbol to say that the packet has ended. Well, it's not that simple actually. It looks very simple here, but as you can see, this is still a 01010101. So this is the packet termination. Actually, what you have is that you send, when you press a button like this, you don't send it only one time. You send it like 20 times. And this is like what we call a coding by repeating the packet. So if you lose one of these, you certainly at least hear one of them, right? So if I press I will send many of these, and then to finish, I will send one of these packets. So this is actually the finishing packet, which says, I'm done. I sent everything that I needed to send. So this is not a device name, this is a dummy device, this is a dummy outlet ID. The real ID is a little bit different than that. And this is the action end, 0, 0. So you have 1, 0 which is on, 0, 1 which is off, 1, 1 I don't know, and then 0, 0 means finish. We have ended, okay? So if you look at what you have, you might see something which is different from this. It's normal because I'm sending many of these packets, okay? So let's go to the second one right now. So we need to speed up a little bit. We finish in, how long do we have? 10 minutes? Oh my God. Okay, so I'd foreseen to do other things, but, so the POGSAG, this is these pagers that maybe you remember from a while ago, the old between us, not the young ones. So there were these pagers, and then they were transmitted in a certain frequency, and you would get these messages, right? It turns out that they actually use them until today. They're used for some kinds of services. I don't see them. I don't think that they're used for civilian uses. They're mostly like for alarms and important things for like. Yeah, you have some examples of applications: telemetry, nuclear plants, all these things.
So this is the one system I've been looking at for a while. So they are not used anymore by, yeah, but okay, by people like us, or some of us. So they are. I've been listening to those signals a bit in France, and I've identified a couple of applications. The first one is just monitoring systems that are like generators that are isolated, like hydroelectric plants, autonomous ones that send reports. Also, air conditioning system. Yeah, repairs. So they're sending reports when the system is not working properly. So it's mostly industrial applications. Another one is just people receiving messages because they're like hotels. They are sending communications between the workers. Other stuff that I've been seeing is medical, and another one that is. I'm going to end with this one. So medical things. I've seen signals sent to emergency people, sending that there was an emergency at some address, that this was this person. So I have the name of the person, the address of the person, and the medical issue. So I've seen some people that were having troubles, and we were seeing this actually in the clear. So they were exposing medical information about people. And the one that is a bit worrisome is the fact that they were also used by legal, I don't know if attorneys, police, or something like that, but we were seeing when someone was arrested by the police and put in jail, they were sending a message to the attorney, and they were saying, okay, this person is at this location and is in custody for this, I don't know, this kind of reason. So you were seeing all this kind of information clear. So I've reported that, and now it's ended. So it seems that so it was only in one region of France, not far from here. They were doing that. And you can also see that there were a group of people in the US who made a report on that, and they were seeing a lot of stuff. And I've seen also some of them, nuclear plants. So in nuclear plants, they were reporting some events, maintenance events that were going on in the plant. So I don't think it's critical, but there were some alerts that were reported through this system. So if you listen to this system, you're not supposed to.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
You may.
I'm not telling you to do it.
So encryption is not part of the standard. So there have been some upgrades to embed encryption, but so far, a lot of those communications are still in clear, so you can see a lot of messages. Yeah, and that's it. And it's still used today, and it's pretty easy to receive those messages, as Leo will tell.
For you,
For when you prevent, they send a reversal message every first day of the month.
Okay.
I also was wondering how can I see it, and I happened to have met someone who developed it outside, and he told me that reversal messages.
okay, so je sais pas. Attends. Qu'est-ce que t'as fait là? Ah, je vois. C'est bon. Okay, so we'll try to do it quick because I'm not sure we'll have the time to check. But so actually, the signals are actually quite easy to receive. They're transmitted with lots of power, lots of power. So we have these frequencies here. All of them are used in France, but I would suggest that we stick to the 466.050. But actually, if we look at it with a wide enough input signal, we can see all of them at the same time. For example, if we look at 1 megahertz, we can see all of them at the same time. So I would advise that we look at 1 megahertz of band. These are FSK signals, so they're changing in frequency. We can see that also very clearly at 4.5 kilohertz of difference. And then we have these data rates here, which are possible. And actually, we have one packet which transmits messages from multiple pagers. Okay, so the structure of the packet looks like this. We have a preamble, which is a bunch of zeros and ones in FSK. Then we have batches, right? And these batches, they contain this sync word here, and then some frames. And inside of the frames, you have messages, which can be either address or the actual message itself. And the address, of course, is the number of the pager which is receiving the thing, right? So usually what I would do, but I think we're actually quite short on time, is that we would try to receive these signals. So one thing actually that maybe I can do is I can show you my own version. So we can go a little bit faster. So let me stop this guy here. So let me open PogSag. So you see this is a little bit more complicated. I still have my sample rate at 1 mega. I have my center frequency at 466.5 megahertz. So this is the frequency I said that we were going to listen to. And then I put the output rate here at 20 kilohertz. So the Pluto SDR source is configured exactly the same way. Maybe I put a little bit more of gain here, but I'm not sure we need it. And then what I did is that I see the whole band in frequency, so we're going to see all the signals, and they don't happen that often, but if we stick around long enough, we can see all of them. And then I put here a low-pass filter just to filter the band that we're looking for. Then we pass this through a fractional resampler with a rate of 50 here, so we're going down from 1 megahertz to 20 kilohertz. Remember, the signal spans 4.5 kilohertz. Okay, so 20 is plenty enough for us to have the signal. And then we're seeing this on a time sync. Okay, so let me run this thing here, and let's see what we get. So there's already one there. So let me just, so then again here, what I like to do on the frequency is I usually like to put a max hold, especially for those signals that are not transmitting all the time. So you will see, when there's a transmission, it will appear somewhere around here. So here we are in 466. This might be 466.5, so this is the band we're trying to look at. This is the higher one. You see it there. The other one, ours is actually very low. And there's the other one here on the side, which is also very low. Maybe we should have concentrated in one of these, because the other one's actually very low. It's not that cool for me to show the signal. So let me zoom in a little bit and see what we get here. So since it's very low, we might have some trouble to see the signal. Let's wait a little bit more to see if it, so it's there again. See, it gets a little bit more thick here because there is a signal, but I think this is not good. I'm going to go to a higher one, maybe this one here. So this is 175. So let's go to this one. So let me just, This is the 175, okay. So let's go back. So we're going to change the variable. $175, and we can take off the 0, not needed. And then let's run this again. So now we're around 175. Put the max hold so we can see what happens. And now I can zoom in here a little bit. And then we can wait to get a signal. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to set a trigger already. Mode. No, actually not. I'm going to wait for the first version of the recorded signal so I can see how high it is. So it's actually not that high, huh? It's actually quite low, to be frank. So this one is going to be a hard one to see. One of the reasons, and this is something you always have to factor in when you try to receive a signal, is your antennas, right? So your antennas might be what's limiting you from seeing the signal. So the signal that comes with the Pluto is a very good antenna for the 433 megahertz. Well, let's be frank, it's not really a very good antenna. So what you can do is you can either raise the gain or you can put another antenna which is more suitable for the band. So let's stick with this antenna for the moment. Let's put this at 0.00, maybe 4, yes, something like that. And let's see if we receive something. It's there. Okay, there you go. So it's very, very low, as you can see. So let's, maybe I shouldn't have stopped it. Okay, the signal is there anyway. So let's take a look at the signal here right now. So remember that there were zeros and ones in FSK, and then there were like data, right? I know, thanks. So if we look here, we see something which is a certain constant frequency here, right? And then if we look further down, we see that the frequency starts changing. Do you see it here? It's easier to look if we zoom out. So we have one frequency here and another one there, okay? We're a little bit off band, so the thing is not that beautiful as I would prefer. But so what we should get is something like this here. So here we have the whole packet, which has been received. So this is the header. When it's zeros and ones, we cannot see them because the packet size is so big that the two frequencies are very well close together. But if we zoom in, especially in this region right here where we have the data, then we have something that looks like this. It's not very easy to see here because we have scaling here. But we see we have high frequency, low frequency, high frequency, low frequency, and so on and so forth. And this is how the data is coded. And this is what we have here in time. So we see that we can recover the signal structure by looking at it like this. Okay? So we'll stop here. I actually have to apologize. This is the first time we're doing this thing, so I might have miscalculated the time necessary to see the rest. There are many other interesting things. I had LoRa and I had DVB-T and all this other stuff. Maybe for the next one we'll go faster. But also we lost some time trying to fix the cards, and I hope that the people who are coming back from the other room will have their cards running. So to end, I would like to tell you that we're both open to questions. If you don't want to ask questions right now, if you want to ask questions afterwards, you can come see us, send us an email. If you have questions about security, Mathieu is the guy. If you want to understand why you're not seeing some signal, just drop me an email, no problem. I am a professor, so I'm used to having emails from students. So you can just send me an email and I'll try to answer in a timely manner. This is what I tell my students as well.
Can you share the
I will.
application so that we can
I will share the slides and I will share all of my receivers, so you can do it yourself from on your side. Okay. Fortunately, you will not have the explanations, but
you need to
to stay here.
Oh, Tanguy is coming.
Yeah,